this free trade agreement signed between the European Union and Japan, going into this G20, it's been described as a huge deal, is it?
It's hugely significant, but it also has some real substance. Obviously, trade agreements of this sort, they never deliver...
I mean, we should say you were Trade Commissioner after all, yeah.
I was Trade Commissioner, and I did make the first moves when I was Trade Commissioner in negotiating this agreement between the European Union and Japan, just as I did in the case of EU and Korea and EU and ASEAN as well. And it just goes to show how long it takes to deliver a free trade agreement. Many, many, many years of negotiation, and I welcome it.
Well, what's substantive about this, first of all?
Well, what's substantive about it is that it will open up areas of both Europe's and Japan's economy that have hitherto been overly protected and overly closed to outsiders. It will unlock a great deal of new trade, not simply diversion of trade. And it provides both a platform, both for Japan and Europe to do more in their trade in the future, but it also offers an encouragement, a template for others who should be seeking similar major trade deals in the future.
Well, we're talking about Britain there. We'll come to that in a minute. But, I mean, let's not forget the noise going into the American election and perhaps the subsequent noise coming out in the form of Twitter, etc., etc. As America is looking more and more inward, or so it would seem, is the rest of the world now looking more and more at globalization and actually flinging their arms together almost in response?
Well, I think people are, disappointed that, in a sense, the two main countries who were most instrumental in the post-war era in creating the multilateral international trading system, the whole global liberal economic order, by which I mean the United States of America and Great Britain, are both countries which are stepping away and stepping back from that very system that they did so much to create in the post-war era. And I regret that. But I think the response of the rest of the world has been should be not to follow that stepping away, but to step up instead. And I think that both Europe and Japan, by the way, alongside China and other key players in the global economy, have got to do more, both to sustain the international trading system, the principles of multilateralism, as well as doing more bilaterally together in their trade and investment relations.
I mean, these sorts of events, G20, and we saw that at Davos as well with that pretty remarkable speech from Xi Jinping. Do you expect that this is going to be another occasion where the Chinese leader can kind of push that narrative of China being ever ready to step in as almost, the new leader of the liberal world order, if you will?
Well, I think China will want to do that, but in doing so effectively, it has to do so in the interests of all the world's trade and economic players and not just on its own terms. I think, I welcome what President Xi has been saying. I welcome China's commitment to the international trading system and to the WTO. But, to really carry conviction, China has to do more to open up its own markets, liberalize its own economy, so that, for example, One Belt, One Road is not simply a sort of one-way street to benefit China, but is a genuine highway on which there can be traffic moving in both directions between China and the rest of the world and its main trading partners.
You mentioned, I was reading earlier through your notes, that rarely will there be as many bad relationships in the one room. I mean, what does that portend for global trade? Do you have stronger ties as you see this kind of, I think Rish was alluding to these special relationships between China and Germany, for example, becoming ever stronger as others lapse?
Well, I mean, the G20 is usually a global showcase for international consensus, and I don't think we can expect that to be quite so on this occasion. I mean, never have there been probably so many fractious personalities and big egos contained in one G20 meeting as we're seeing today in Germany. And I think Mrs. Merkel will have, in a sense, an invidious role as the host. She both wants to encourage good discussion and dialogue and agreement, but the rest of the world is also looking to her to express what is frankly an anti-Trump sentiment on international trade, on climate change, and on migration. So I think the communique, as you finally see it, perhaps will not have as much sort of depth.
That's exactly what I want to get to.
As you would hope for. But it's important nonetheless that the meeting's taking place.
Whichever way, you've attended these summits. Now, speak candidly, Peter, for a second. I mean, people do talk to each other properly there, and then you probably get a healthy debate, perhaps even some very fiery arguments taking place. But at the end of it, that communique you mentioned is probably going to be a banal one, right? So the thing is, what will there be discussed there, and what will the mood and what will the tensions be like behind closed doors?
I think what's important is that people talk with each other rather than past each other, however much that is reflected in the final communique. But at the same time, we have to realise, you know, each of the main leaders will be having an eye on their domestic audiences. Mrs. Merkel has elections in Germany in September. President Trump will be mindful of the Russia investigations that are going on at home. President Xi has his own 19th Party Congress to look forward to in the autumn, where he has to command some real change in China going forward. So they're both talking to each other, as I say, rather than talking past each other, but also with a keen eye on their domestic audiences back at home.